She looks at me, she says, you don't remember what you hit, do you? I said, no, I have no recollection. She said, you could have killed somebody. You could have killed yourself. I don't know what's going on with you, but you cannot stay here anymore. I don't want you around our girls. You're gonna have to leave and go figure this out, but I'm done.
In season 1, we met with 4 incredible guests and chronicled their path to finding purpose. In season 2, we're back with 4 more incredible guests, and we're gonna walk through their lowest moments. We're gonna walk through some of their highest triumphs. And I'm Chris Drasbach, and welcome to Repurposed. Tim, I'm excited to finally be able to sit down and hang out with you. I know we've been communicating on social media for a while and following each other, and the great work that you do is inspiring to me, and I'm really pumped to be able to bring that to our audience. The series is called Repurposed, and really to be repurposed, you had to have lived a life without purpose. So let's start by talking a little bit about that directionless part of your life.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. Honestly, my childhood was a good childhood. My father was a police officer. My mother, believe it or not, in the 80s was a professional bodybuilder, which was uncommon in the 80s. There was no drugs and alcohol in my house whatsoever. I didn't grow up around it. There was no liquor in the cabinets. There was no beer in the refrigerator. Never saw drugs. The age of 6, though, my father and mother got a divorce. As a young boy, growing up without a father, it had a tremendous impact on me. I have a brother who's 11 years older than me. I thought it was my fault. Why would my father leave me at 6, but he stuck around for my brother who's about to be a junior in high school? Was I not a good boy? Did I not clean the room? Did I not pack, do my lunches? Did I do my chores? Anything and everything that would put the blame on me of why my parents got a divorce. I carried that burden from the age of 6 up until the age of 44 till I got sober. Because to me, if my own parent didn't love me, my own parent would leave me, then why should I love myself? If my own parent didn't care about me, why should I care about myself? I might as well drink and drug. My mother did a great job, though, raising me. She got me into sports. She kept me active. I played baseball for 8 years, football. I was almost a professional skateboarder. I grew up with Brandon Novak. I was Golden Glove and Junior Olympic boxer. It's funny now that I'm sober and I work the steps of recovery, not just being sober. I look back at my childhood and I realize I had the disease of addiction as a young child. I didn't just play baseball, I was the all-star pitcher. I had to be the best at everything that I did. And when we lost, the blame was all on me. Forget the other players on the team. It was because I didn't strike out that guy and we didn't win. Football, I was the all-star safety and running back. If I didn't score that touchdown or I didn't stop that guy from getting the touchdown, it was my fault. Forget the other 30 players on the team. Skateboarding, I couldn't just skateboard. I had to hang out with Brandon Novak and Bucky, Matt Martin. I took everything to the next level. I wasn't interested in drugs and alcohol because I was so active in being an athlete in sports. 9th grade came and we had a welcome to high school freshman party. It was the first time I ever had alcohol. And I didn't drink one. I drank and drank and drank till I got completely sick. And I remember my mother picking me up the next morning and she said, "Did you drink alcohol?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." She said, "Well, I'm not going to punish you because the rest of your weekend is completely ruined, but hope this deters you from drinking ever again." So It actually did. The rest of my weekend was ruined. The funny thing was, we were having a cookout, and she said, I need 50 ears of corn shucked. So you need to shuck all 50 ears of this corn downstairs in the basement. Here's a bag for the corn, and here's a bag for you to get sick. 10th, 11th grade came, still no alcohol, no drugs. I just didn't hang around people that did it. The summer before senior year got here, and my grades were not good enough to go into college. A lot of the friends that I did know were starting to get into heavy drugs, and I wasn't really interested in doing that. So my father, my brother, and both my grandfathers were in the military. I figured that's what I'm going to do. That's what the men in my family do. We join the military. They were all in the Army. I couldn't do that. I had to be the best. I had to go to the toughest, so I joined the Marine Corps. Once I joined and I realized that this was the last year before I was joining the military, my thought process was, I might as well go to parties. I might as well have fun. I might as well get it out of my system. It's just a phase. Let me have a good time. Now, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. My addiction started with that first beer. Once I picked up that first beer, it was off to the races. Well, what else is at this party? Because I would like to try it. So the whole senior year, I would drink, started smoking pot, LSD, mushrooms. PCP was around at the time, so I dabbled in that, K2, some cocaine. I went through the gambit of whatever was at the party. For me, thank God, heroin was not around at the time. I probably would have done it. Who knows if I'd even be sitting here, because the drugs and alcohol that I did tried taking my life as it is. I get into the military, the drugs did stop, 100%, no more drugs. But once I graduated boot camp and I got into the actual Fleet Marine Force and I was stationed in North Carolina, as soon as we got done at 4 p.m., we left the base, we were at the strip clubs and the bars, and we were drinking. Now, around the bases, the bar's mottos were, if you're old enough to take a bullet for the country, you're old enough to have a cold beer. There was no deterrent for 18, 19, 20-year-old young men going into the bar and drinking. We would see our sergeants at these same bars, in their late 20s, early 30s. And their only rules were, don't get locked up, don't get in a fight, and make sure your ass up is 3:30 in the morning and stand in that formation at 4 a.m. ready to go. So it was kind of a badge of honor to see how much could we drink, how much could we train, how much could we just engulf ourselves in the military. In 1995, wow, we got deployed to Somalia for 6 months. This was after the war. I am not a combat veteran, but I did get to see the ramifications of what war did to a third world country, its people. I didn't think at the time that it had an effect on me. Once we got back into the States, I had a difficult time getting back into the swing of things, life. My alcoholism was skyrocketing through the roof. I was missing, formations. I was missing drills and training. And they finally brought me in to talk to a chaplain and a psychiatrist. They determined that at that point that maybe what I saw was unable for me to comprehend and continue in my military service. So I was honorably discharged at that time. It was the best thing for me at 20 years old. When I came back, I had a hard time. Why did we go over there? Why were we at war? What was the bigger picture of all this? Did I even want to be a part of that bigger picture? It kind of made me feel as if I was a part of something that I truly, in my heart, didn't believe in, and I didn't want any parts of it anymore. When I came home, the first month was great. I didn't have to get up at 3:30, didn't have to shave, didn't have to wear a uniform. The second month came, and I'm at my mom's house. I'm 20 years old. I have no job. I have no car. I have no purpose. I'm supposed to be in the Marines. My whole life I was something. Baseball player, football player, boxer, skateboarder. I always had an identity. Now I'm not even a Marine anymore. I'm a 21-year-old unemployed alcoholic living in my mom's apartment. The third month came and I fell into a severe depression that I've never felt before. I stopped shaving, I stopped showering, and I found myself one day, I went into my father's armoire and I grabbed his gun and I sat it on my lap. Thank God I had the right mind to call my girlfriend at the time, and I said, hey, there's something wrong. I'm looking at a gun. I don't know what to do. I need help. Within 5 minutes, she was over at my house. She took the gun from me. She stayed with me until my mom got home from work. And when my mother got home, I didn't tell her I had my stepfather's gun in my lap. She would have definitely had me committed and put away. But I told her, I said, Mom, there's something wrong. I need to see somebody. She got me into seeing some psychiatrists. And at 1995, going into 96, they diagnosed me with bipolar 1 manic depressive disorder. PTSD in 95, 96 was not even in existence. I know the government knew about it, but it wasn't a clinical diagnosed disorder. The first thing that they wanted to do was put me on the medicines. If somebody is put on medicine, please be honest with your doctors. I didn't tell my doctors I was drinking every day. I didn't tell them I was smoking pot. I didn't tell them I was taking pain medicine. The medicines that they put me on, they weren't working. They don't work with drugs and alcohol in your system. So when I would go back for that 60, 90-day checkup, it's not working. I feel worse. They never could pinpoint why. So I would be on certain medicines. They would take me off. They would add medicines. They would up the dosages, switch them all, a whole new cocktail. This up and down of medicines, switching, lasted from the age of 20, 21 to the age of 44 until I got sober. And like a typical person who suffers from bipolar, I would feel good after 6, 7 months and be like, I don't need them. I don't need these medicines. What the heck are these medicines for? And I'd go back after a crash and the doctor would say, well, they were working. That's why you felt as if you didn't need them. They were actually working. I didn't want to hear that. I thought there was something wrong with me. Why do I have to take medicine to feel normal like you, and you? Why was I born with a chemical imbalance that I have to take this tiny piece of medicine to make me get up and go to work, to make me function, to make me love, to give me emotions? Why was I born this way? That would lead me right back to self-medicating because it was so much easier to self-medicate than admit that I have some type of mental disability or mental illness and have to take medicines for the rest of my life because that's a big, hard pill to swallow. But going to get a 6-pack of beer and smoking pot and taking pain pills, that's so much easier and it's fun. From the age of 21 until the age of 32, I couldn't hold a job. 5 months, 6 months. I think the longest I held was maybe a year and a half. I went through 32 jobs from the age of 21 to 32. I couldn't come to the terms that I had an addiction or mental illness problem. It was the employer. It was the time that I had to be there. Heaven forbid I had to work overtime. It was the employee that I didn't like. It was everything else other than the fact that I had a mental illness and addiction that I wasn't treating. We had our second child, and I lost my job. And my wife was just like, what's going on here? Like, we have 2 kids now. You need to provide for the family. I don't know. I just can't keep a job. I don't have a purpose. And I was a carpenter. I mean, I enjoy building things. It gave me purpose. It gave me satisfaction and accomplishment. But it didn't fill something inside of me. And I was like, I wasn't born just to be a carpenter and build things. But I had a bright idea at the age of 32. You know what I am going to do? I'm going to become a professional mixed martial arts fighter at the age of 32 years old because that's a sane thing to think of at 32. And God bless her heart, she says, I'll give you 1 year. We have some money, bills are paid, I'll give you 1 year. But after 1 year, if you don't make anything of this, you're going to have to go back to work and you're going to have to provide for the family. So she did give me an opportunity. 6 months into training, I got picked up by a gym. About the 7th, 8th month, I had my first fight. And that 1 year turned into almost 4 years of fighting up and down the East Coast, Philadelphia, Washington, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware. I wasn't making that good of money, $1,500, $2,000 a fight, but I was fighting on TV. I was fighting in front of 2,000, 3,000 crowds. I have developed self-worth. I was accomplishing something, and I felt valued. And still to this day, there is no drug or any euphoria that has ever matched coming out to an arena of 3,000 people with the lights going off and the music going and people screaming. That endorphin and dopamine dump that happens when you come out from drugs and alcohol never touched it. And I think I also got addicted to that feeling as well. It was amazing. It comes to my last fight. I'm 35 going on 36, and I put the gentleman in a rear naked choke, and I hear popping in my shoulder. I was like, that doesn't sound good. It immediately burned like a hot knife. I had to let go. He flipped me over, rear naked chokes me, and puts me out. I get to the back, and my trainer's like, okay, let's get dressed. We're going to go out and have some dinner and stuff like that. And I couldn't lift my arm. He had to help me put my shirt on. I remember going out, and I had 32 friends and family. This is Harris Casino out in Philly. My wife goes to hand me a beer. Even though I'm left-handed, I'm predominantly right-handed. So I grab it with my left hand, and she immediately notices that I'm not using my dominant hand. And she said, what's wrong? I said, I can't move my arm. I can't even lift it above my waist. And she's like, are you kidding me? That's it. You're done. You had fun. You're done. So that next week we go in. I tore my labrum in 3 places. I had to have emergency rotator cuff surgery. That started a 4.5-year long pain pill prescription addiction to Oxycontin. And we're talking 2014, 15, 16, 17. They didn't have the perimeters in place like they do now. I could just specifically go to my primary care physician, ask him to fill the prescription, and he would do that. I didn't have to go to a pain management clinic. I didn't have to jump through hoops, which I'm so thankful that it is like that now, that you actually have to go through certain steps to actually get pain medicine now, because he would just simply refill them. I wasn't taking one every 3-4 hours as prescribed. I was taking 4 to 5. I was running through my prescription 2 weeks early, calling my buddies to hold me over till my next prescription was filled. I was drinking 12 to 18 beers on top of that and smoking almost about a quarter of weed a day. That was my feel-good concoction that I could get up out of bed, function somewhat, and feel okay about myself. And I remember one day I'm sitting on my bed and I'm like, man, even though I've been doing this for 4 years and this is what makes me feel normal, there's a good chance I might go to bed tonight and my body might just say, you know what, I'm done, and shut down, because I'm taking all this oxys, I'm drinking all this beer. And even though it's normal to me and what makes me feel okay, my body might just be done. And I truly believe the addiction and mental illness tells me, you know what, why would you want to die in your sleep? Just do it now. And I reach over and I grab my bottle of oxys. And I remember I dumped them out of my hand. I had 18 20 milligram oxys. And I throw all 18 of them back. I go into the living room and I open a 12-pack of beer and I guzzle all 12 within 45 minutes. I go into the bed and I lay down, and I remember looking up into the ceiling and I said, please God, don't let me wake up. I don't know how to stop. I can't live this way anymore. I just want the pain to go away. And I pass out. I woke up that next evening, like 9 o'clock at night. So 18, 19 hours, I was completely out. My first thought that came to my mind when I opened up my eyes was, holy shit, I didn't die. The second thought was to immediately get up. I went into the bathroom and I saw my refill on the counter, and I opened it up and I dumped the entire bottle into the toilet. I remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, this is going to get bad, but no matter how bad this gets, we are never taking pain medicine again. And for the next 10 days, I was the sickest I think I've ever been in my entire life, of coming off of 4 years of opioids. It was living hell on earth. I remember each and every day specifically. And every morning when I would wake up, in between the crying and the throwing up and the snot and stuff, I would look into the mirror and I would say, remember this feeling. We are never doing this again. The 10th day came and I had to get out of the house. I've been in the house for 10 days, just basically dying, coming off of opioids, which I didn't even realize because I was probably kind of dying. So I get in my truck and we have this beautiful, beautiful reservoir down in Maryland, and people go hiking and biking and they picnic and walk their dogs. It's just a really pretty reservoir. And I'm driving through it and I'm beating the hell out of the inside of my truck. I'm hitting the steering wheel, I'm hitting the roof of my truck, and I had zero faith in a higher power at this time. My thought process was, if something loved me and created me and cared about me, then why am I suffering with the disease of mental illness and addiction? Because surely if you loved me and created me, you wouldn't put me through so much suffering. So I'm driving through the reservoir, and I get to this tree where December 27th, 1996, my best friend, unfortunately, at the age of 18, lost control of his vehicle and hit the tree, and he died that year at the age of 18. And I pull up to the tree and I get out and I go up to the tree and I put my hand on the tree and I'm crying and I'm like, Bill, I need a sign. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I survived. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I just need to know that I'm not alone, that there's something else out there greater than myself because I don't believe in anything. Just send me some sign. And I get back in my truck and I go to leave the reservoir and I'm crying and my nose is running. So I happen to pull over to collect myself. But for some reason, I don't know why, I pulled over facing oncoming traffic on the wrong side of the road. This gentleman pulls up and he gets out and he opens the back door and he grabs his dog. He's about to go walk across the street where the water is. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, man, he looks so familiar. I don't know where I know him from. Like I just couldn't place it. And then all of a sudden it dawns on me, my friend who passed away in 1996, it was his father. This was March 16, 2017, 21 years later. I haven't seen this man before or since the day of my friend's funeral. And I get out and I look at him. I say, Mr. Bill, is that you? And he looks at me, he says, Timmy, what's wrong? And I fall to the curb and I'm crying. I'm like, I try to commit suicide. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I don't know why I'm here. I just don't believe in anything. And he walks over to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder. And he says, Timmy, I'm not supposed to be here this morning. He said, my bags are packed in my truck. I was supposed to leave at 6 a.m. this morning and go to Myrtle Beach for a family reunion trip. He said, my wife came to me in a dream last night and told me to come here this morning at 10 a.m. to walk the dog. He said, I believe I was sent here to see you. And I said, Mr. Bill, I just stopped at Billy's tree and asked him for a sign. And he looks at me and goes, everything's going to be okay. We're being watched out over. You're being protected. When I left and I'm driving out of the park, I had about 10 minutes where I'm like, okay, there's something else greater than me. It's out there. Like, I'm being cool. I'm being watched out over. I'm being protected. And just like that, the disease of addiction says you're right. You're being protected. Nothing's going to happen to you. So you don't have to stop drinking and doing drugs because, you got somebody looking out over you. So from 2017 to March 5th, 2021, I drank the most alcohol I've ever drank in my entire life. I never picked up a pain pill again, thank God. What took its place was the beers, they just weren't doing it enough. I switched over to whiskey. It started with one or two of the little miniatures that sit on the counter along with my beer. And then the 12, 18 beers turned into IPAs, the lagers, the 10, 13% beers. And I was still drinking 12 to 18 of them. Eventually the beers went down to about a 6-pack or 12-pack. But now I'm picking up a sleeve of Fireball whiskey. It got so bad and out of control that I knew that if I didn't hold 3 or 4 of them for the next morning, that I wasn't even getting out of bed. I had to put 2 or 3 of them in a shoe next to my bed so that I could literally roll over, grab 2 or 3 of them and drink it just so I could sit up to get up out of bed. I was drinking at my last year and a half, 30 to 35 Fireball miniatures a day. People ask me, why didn't you just get a big bottle? Well, if I got a big bottle and I drank that whole thing, I must be an alcoholic, right? Because I drank that whole bottle. But if I get these miniatures, man, I can drive down the street and throw them out the window. I can hide them in my sock drawer in a medicine cabinet. The wife doesn't know how much I'm drinking. The best part about it is I could drink 10 to 15 of them and I would forget that I drank 10 or 15 of them and go get another 10 more. But if I had a big bottle and at the end of the day that was gone, that's accountability that I actually drank that much alcohol. And I couldn't have that. That just wasn't possible. The last 2 months before I went into rehab, I just got in a brand new truck. I'm leaving the liquor store with my sleeve of Fireball as normal. And I hit something. Zero recollection of what I hit. I have no idea still to this day what I hit. But I remember walking into the front door and telling my wife, I'm not dealing with this shit tonight. I'm going to bed. And I passed out. When I drank, I was a blackout drunk. So the day before never even existed. I could have been a monster the day before, but I woke up and it was sunshines and rainbows and whatever happened never even happened. And I woke up and I said, good morning, I'm going to go get eggs, milk, and bread. Does anybody need something else for breakfast? And I remember she looks at me and was like, How are you going to do that? I'm like, what are you talking about? My brand new truck in the driveway. And she says, go outside and look at your vehicle. And I remember going outside and I saw the driver's side and it was spotless. I'm like, what the hell is she talking about? But I get over to the passenger side and side mirror's gone and the front side tire and rim was hanging off the axle and was pushed up underneath of the bumper. I honestly don't know how I even drove it in, other than the fact that I was less than a block away from my house, and I probably had that oh shit factor. I better get this in the driveway, or else I'm getting locked up and my truck's getting towed. So I pushed it home into the driveway. I remember her coming out the front door, and she looks at me and she says, "You don't remember what you hit, do you?" I said, "No, I have no recollection." She said, "You could have killed somebody. You could have killed yourself. I don't know what's going on with you, but you cannot stay here anymore. I don't want you around our girls. You're going to have to leave and go figure this out, but I'm done." So I called AAA. They put a spare tire on, and I called my buddy. And I'm like, "Hey, man, can I come over for like 3-4 days? She'll cool down. And 3-4 days, she'll let me back in, and I don't have to change a damn thing. I can just keep going, but I'm going to give her some space." I go over to his house, and we talk for about an hour. And his grandioso, great idea was, well, you got kicked out of your house and you wrecked your truck earlier yesterday. It's Friday night. We might as well go to the bar. And I'm like, God damn it, that's a great idea. You know, I have a justification. I wrecked my truck and my wife kicked me out. Let's go to the bar. It's Friday night. So we go to the bar. I get hammered. As I'm leaving the bar, I rear end somebody at the red light. Now, this is less than 24 hours from wrecking it the first time, which I don't even remember. But I remember this one because I get out and the gentleman, he's fine. He had a tow hitch on the back of his truck, no scratch on the vehicle. Front of my bumper's all jacked in now. And I remember looking at him saying, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm okay." I said, "Okay, well, your truck's okay. I'm okay. You're okay. We're out of here." I slapped him on his back and I took off. Remember, I get back to my buddy's house and I said, "I can't be here. I got to go be by myself. I got to leave." So I grab my stuff and I leave and I stop back at the liquor store. I get 2 sleeves of Fireball and I went and park at a park and ride where you would park for the day and get on a train or go to work or what have you. And I didn't want nobody to bother me. I wanted to be left alone. I turned my phone off and I sat in the back of my truck for 48 hours, drinking and throwing up and passing out and drinking and throwing up and passing out, just over and over and over again. Every once in a while I would turn on the music and listen to a sad ass song and put myself through the ramifications of I'm a piece of crap. My parents deserve a better son. My wife deserves a better husband. My kids deserve a better father. And then I turn the song back off and drink myself till I passed out again. March 5th of 2021 at 7 after 10 in the morning, I turned my phone on after 48 hours of having it off. And 2 minutes after I turned my phone on after having it off for 48 hours, the phone rings. And it just says Westchester, Pennsylvania. I know nobody in Westchester, Pennsylvania. My first thought is it's a scam collector or bill collector. But for some reason, I pick up the phone. And all I hear on the other side is, "Lodgen, what the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm drunk, and I'm tired." He says, "Good, motherfucker, that's what you need." He said, "This is Novak." He said, "I just talked to your mom and your wife. I got a plane ticket ready for you tonight. You're going to go down to Banyan Treatment Centers down in West Palm Beach, Florida, and you're going to go get your life back." Now I'm on the other line, drinking for 2 days. I'm like, "Okay, yep, sure, sounds good. Yep, okay." I just want to hang up the phone. I don't want to go to rehab. Are you kidding me? In Florida? Like, that's not happening. I just wanted to hang up the phone. Hang up the phone, and my wife calls me a couple minutes later, worried sick. "We've been trying to find you for 2 days. We were about to call the police, missing report, the whole deal. Please come home, pack your bags, take a shower, try to eat, and maybe take a nap." I had about 3 to 4 hours before I had to get to the airport. So I go home, I take a shower, pack my bags. I couldn't eat and I couldn't take a nap. I'm in full-on panic, anxiety mode. Who's going to pay my truck payment? Who's going to keep the electric on? Who's going to feed the kids? Who's going to cut the grass? Everything other than how can I save my life? Everything else that if I don't do this, all goes away anyway. But that wasn't important to me. It was the little things that meant zero to me, except for saving my life. But I was trying to come up with every excuse not to get on that plane He didn't tell me it was a 30, 60, 90-day program. Is it a 6-month program? Like, what the hell am I getting myself into? How did my life get so bad that I have to go into a rehabilitation center to get my life back on track? And I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and I'm talking myself out of going. And the disease of addiction and mental illness, I truly believe, had one last chance to take my life. And I remember hearing, "Take my hand and come with me and I will take the pain away." So I get up and this voice says, "Go to the basement." And I go to the basement. I throw a rope around the rafter of my home. I stand up on a bucket and it says, "Step off and I will take the pain away." As I'm stepping off of this bucket, my wife realizes I'm not upstairs and she comes running down the steps. I already have 1 foot off. I'm in the midst of stepping off this bucket and she screams, "What are you doing?" And it startled me back up onto the bucket. "What are you doing?" I was like, "I can't do it. I can't go. I just want the pain to go away." And she says it really calming and loving. And she's like, "Do you know what this will do to your little girls? Please, please get off of that bucket and get on that plane. Get on that plane and everything is going to be okay." So I get down, I cry for about 5, 10 minutes. I call Brandon. I'm like, "Hey buddy, I'm going, man. I'm getting on the plane. Like, I gotta get, if I don't get on this plane tonight, this disease of addiction and mental illness is going to kill me." All he says is, "Call me when you pass security. I want to make sure you're getting on the plane and not catching a cab and leaving the airport." I'm like, "Okay, man." So a couple hours goes by, my mom picks me up, I get to the airport, and I call him. I'm like, "Hey, buddy, I got 30, 35 minutes till the plane leaves. I'm past security. I'm going." And all he says is, "I'm proud of you. I love you. You're about to get back everything that you've ever lost times 10. And he just hangs up the phone. What happened to me next in that airport was the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. As I go to sit down in this chair at the airport, waiting for them to call me to board the plane, as I sit down, I get this overwhelming feeling of hope that engulfs my entire body. It was the exact same feeling that drugs and alcohol gave me, except this time it felt as if my worry, my fear, my doubt, my anxiety, my pain, and the addiction was lifted from my body. I hear this voice of this woman who I've never heard before, I've never heard since. It was calming, it was loving, and she simply says, "Everything is going to be all right." For the first time in my life at the age of 44, I had peace come over my body and I had hope. I knew at that moment in that airport that something significant happened to me and that not everybody gets to experience that. And it literally was like a switch went off in my brain. And I said, "I've got to do something with this," because I was given a gift. I got to rehab and I used to say I went addict mode, but I did. I went 100 miles an hour in recovery. I didn't miss any meetings. I went to extra meetings for military members and veterans. I journaled. I did homework. I shared my story. I did everything that they told me I needed to do to save my life. For me, getting sober wasn't an option at that point. It was truly life or death. I know even now with 3 years, 2 months sober, if I pick up again, it's going to kill me. It's not if, it's when. So I came home, I got a sponsor, I got a home group. I did 98 meetings in 90 days. I went meetings. And for some reason I said, man, it'd be pretty neat to share my story outside of the AA and NA rooms because there's only a certain amount of us that are in these rooms. Maybe I'll do one of these podcasts. They're pretty neat. Maybe I'll reach somebody. So I do this podcast and I'm in Baltimore. The gentleman filming the podcast is in Oahu, Hawaii. And we do this segment. It's an hour and a half long. I thought nothing of it. I had 6 months sober. I was like, that was a neat experience. Maybe somebody might hear it. If not, that was pretty cool. I've never done that before. 2 weeks goes by and it airs. I'm actually in Delaware with my pickup truck picking up a table to take to Brandon's, one of his Novak houses. And I'm waiting for the gentleman to open the garage. And my phone rings. And it says Cleveland, Ohio. I'm like, who the hell's calling me from Ohio? And I pick up my phone, and there's a gentleman on the other line. He said, "Is this Tim?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, this is Tony." And I'm like, "Brother, I don't know no Tony, man. I'm sorry, you got the wrong number." He's like, "No, Prophet, I served with you in 1995 in the Marine Corps." I'm like, "How in the hell did you get my number, man? It's 2021. He's like, "I found it off of Facebook." I'm like, "Well, what's going on? Because you don't sound that good." He said, "Man, that podcast you did 2 weeks ago?" He said, "I watched it 4 days ago." He said, "And for the first time in 18 years, he goes, I have 4 days sober." He said, "Your story gave me strength, courage, and hope to possibly beat this disease of mental illness and addiction. And I wanted to call you and tell you I love you and thank you." He said, "I didn't think a Facebook message would do the justice." We talked for about 5 more minutes, and then I hung up. And when I hung up, I started to cry. There's no coincidence that I just happened to do a podcast filmed in Hawaii from Baltimore, and it just happened to reach a gentleman that I served with in 1995, and it helped him to get through 18 years of addiction. And it is now 2024, and he has almost 3 years sober. So how many more people could I help? How many more lives could I possibly save? And is this what's finally going to give me purpose, is sharing my adversities and what I've been through to possibly help shape and mold somebody else. So I did the law of numbers like a salesman, and I would message 30 or 40 podcasts and get 2 or 3 of them to come back to me. And to this day, 3 years, 2 months sober, I just finished my 118th podcast guest on Monday. I've been fortunate enough to be in 7 mental health and addiction magazines. Last year of 2023, I was voted Baltimore, Maryland's most inspirational person from alcoholic to advocate. I have had all these amazing things happen to me in sobriety. Just because you're sober doesn't mean that life doesn't happen on life's terms. It doesn't mean that things aren't going to continue to happen to you, but what we can control is how we react to the situations that do happen to us. June of this year, I found out that all 3 of my daughters and my sister were molested by my brother. 4 days after that, my cousin, who I grew up with as a big brother, was found with a massive heart attack, unfortunately, after suffering 35, 38 years of drug addiction and alcoholism. A couple of days after that, I found out that my wife of 28 years had been messaging and meeting multiple gentlemen on the side all during my sobriety. Now, I drove to the liquor store, and I sat in the parking lot of the liquor store, and I cried and I screamed, and I asked my higher power, "I'm doing everything that you've asked me to do. I have purpose. I've been giving hope to people. I'm sharing my story. Why is this happening to me when I've done everything that you've asked me to do and I've changed my life?" And I get this answer: "Because you wouldn't have been able to handle this in your addiction." I started my truck and I left. I went home, and actually I called Brandon and I told him what was going on. And he said, "Let me ask you something." He said, "You do all these podcasts, you do all these interviews, you go and you speak around the country. When's the last time you did something for yourself?" I said, "I don't know, maybe 2.5 years ago when I got sober." He said, "Why don't you go away for 2 weeks and get your head right, put the phone down. You were just at the liquor store, you were about to throw away 2.5 years of sobriety." I said, "Okay." So I took his advice and I went away for 2 weeks to the retreat. And when I got there, people recognized me from podcasts. And they came up to me and wanted to talk to me and ask me questions. And it just dawned on me that this was supposed to be where I was supposed to be at this time. What happened to me put me in this mental facility for 2 weeks so I could reach more people. About 4 or 5 months into my sobriety, I would say this one prayer over and over and over again. And it dawned on me when I was in treatment that my prayer actually came true. Because, during alcohol and drug addiction, it was, "Please get me out of this. I'll never do this again. I swear to God," everything. But 3 or 4 months of getting sober, I said, "Please, God, help me to reach one more person who are suffering with mental illness and addiction, so that they know that they are not alone, that they can recover and they can live the life they've ultimately had waiting for them." And I've been set on this journey and path that now I work full time in a treatment center, and I get to help individuals coming out of jails and institutions and off the streets. And I get to show them that no matter what happens, that we have the power to pick up or not. There's 9 billion people on the planet. The odds that you and I were born is 1 in 400 trillion, right? I've heard that over and over again in my recovery. And I took that winning lottery ticket and I put it in the sock drawer and I forgot all about it and I took it for granted. We won the biggest lottery in existence, and that's life. And I'm not going to waste it anymore. So if I get to do these interviews and share my story and show people that they're not alone, don't be ashamed that you have an addiction or a mental illness. There's others out there that know exactly what you're going through. There is so much more people out there that know what you're going through than you could possibly imagine. They might not just speak about it, but they know, and we can connect with each other. I am truly grateful to be alive. I'm humbled by the experience that I get to share my story. And if I can just reach one more person, then I'm going to do it whenever I'm asked. Drugs and alcohol promised and took everything from me. And it's time I'm coming for everything that it promised and took from me. I'm coming for it all. I'm not going to settle until I know that I've made the difference that I truly believe that I'm here for. The 27 years didn't happen to me, it happened for me. I couldn't possibly do these interviews if I didn't go through the pain. I couldn't possibly talk about mental illness if I wasn't diagnosed with bipolar and lived through the manic moments and the depression. I couldn't talk about suicide unless I tried taking my own life. When it happened to me, at the time I thought I was being punished, but I look back on it, I wasn't being punished, I was being educated. How to be able to teach others that it's okay. It's not easy, but I can guarantee you it is worth every minute of it. I get to experience happiness and sadness. I get to experience loss and death. Before, the only thing I experienced was passing out and waking up and doing it over again and opening my eyes, and my daughter's 6. And I'm like, what the hell happened to the last 5.5 years? Like, I didn't experience anything. I was just on autopilot. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm humbled. And if I can reach one more person, that's one less we lose to this disease.
And let's hearken back, way back to the beginning. And let's talk a little bit about some things that they're definitely talked about more nowadays than they used to be, that's for sure. But how about we talk a little bit about the stigma surrounding suicide? Just being at that point where you don't see another option. There really is no other place to go besides just ending it. And in your story, you hit that point 3 times that I counted. Mm-hmm. And I'm not good at math, but that's not good, right? No. And there's so many people, myself included, who have felt that before. And I think there's a lot of shame surrounding just feeling that way. There's so much shame societally just to even debate the thought of taking your own life. And it's a real thing that a lot of humans have experienced for a variety of different reasons. So I think to really drive that home, what do you think? What do you think about that? Let's talk about the human element, being at that point where you have nowhere else to go.
Yeah, well, the stigma is absolutely real, 100%. My parents are old school. My father, you don't have a mental illness, you're weak. Suck it up. I don't want to hear anything about it. You'll kill yourself. You're a coward. The hopelessness feeling that nothing is going to change, that nothing can get better, that nobody understands what you're going through, nobody knows the pain, is a very secluding, scary place to be. When you feel as if there is nothing else left, nobody cares. The biggest thing for me was I was a burden on everybody, and they would be better off without me in their life anyway. I'm doing them a favor. The disease lies to you, and it puts all these things in your head saying they'll be better off without you. Nobody cares anyway. You've lost all these jobs, you've caused all these problems. It would just put their life at peace, and it almost talks you into doing it. When you're in here by yourself, that's a dangerous place to be. Still today, even in my sobriety, that's a dangerous place for me to stay up in there for a long period of time. I'll give myself a couple minutes, And I'll go through the emotions. Then I'm like, okay, I got to get out of here. Like the ride's over. Let's get off this ride and go someplace else. But the stigma of mental illness needs to be understood that, just because somebody may not be diagnosed with depression or bipolar or schizoaffective doesn't mean that they haven't had points in their life where they may have thought about suicide, or they may have not wanted to get up and go to work for 3 or 4 days. They may not have been diagnosed with a depression, but they sure as hell just had a bout of depression. They didn't want to get up. They didn't want to take a shower. They didn't want to do the laundry. They didn't want to pick up their kids. That feeling of hopelessness, I don't wish on anybody. And honestly, I didn't think I was ever going to be able to come out of it. It's a dark basement with no way out. There's no ladder. There's no lights. And all you see is just consumed of darkness. And it's funny that one of the nonprofits that I work for, it's called Love and Light to the World. And their motto is, in the darkness, you can always find light. And they give me these shirts and these wristbands, and they glow up in the dark, so you're never alone in the darkness. You always have light around you. That feeling of hope, something I never thought I could have, but as soon as I got it, it was something I knew I could never live without. People need to understand that the stigma of mental illness is your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your cousin, your nephew. The judgment is what needs to stop. Instead of sympathy, we need empathy. Instead of pointing fingers, we need more hugs. Instead of yelling at somebody, you need to be quiet and maybe listen for a little bit. Maybe they just need to vent and let something out. The power of hearing somebody tell you that they are proud of you and that they understand could change somebody's mental capacity in a minute. Some of these clients that come in our treatment center say they haven't heard somebody say they love them or proud of them in years. And to hear that, and you say that to them, and their face and their emotional well-being changes in that instant, sometimes that's all we need to know, is that we matter, like somebody cares. Mental illness should not be frowned upon. It shouldn't be pointed out. It's so easy to be mean and nasty and point fingers, but that takes zero effort. I can flip you off at the red light and cut you off and call you a son of a bitch, but am I going to be the same guy that pulls over on the side of the road and gets you some food and gives you a hug and gives you a blanket or something and says it's going to be all right? That's going to change somebody's life. A simple gesture of humanity.
I got to agree with that entirely. And I think to kind of summarize this, to close this interview up, it's interesting how it's 2024 now, and I've been in or around recovery for a long time, about 17 years at this point. And 17 years ago, two large, burly gentlemen could not sit down and have this discussion.
Oh.
If we did, we would have been mocked left and right. We're probably going to be mocked left and right for this discussion anyway. But I think there is so much power in letting other people know that they're not alone. If more people in 2007 had been loud about recovery and letting people know that they don't have to be alone, maybe it would have been a little bit easier a walk for me, and thankfully the universe gives us guides like Brandon Novak. In your case, just somebody who appears out of nowhere with the solution to what ails you. And I just want to throw out there that I'm extra grateful that you came up here and we had this discussion today. And I'm thankful that we can be burly gentlemen and be vulnerable publicly and let other burly gentlemen and others know that they're not alone. So thank you, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me share my story. And Brandon called me, and all he simply did was freely open his hand up and say, I want to help you. It didn't cost him a damn